The summer of 1883 had become a season of suffering across the Arizona Territory. The sun seemed to rise earlier every morning and disappear later every evening. For weeks, hardly a cloud had crossed the sky. The earth had cracked beneath the heat, the grass had turned brown, and the small creek that ran through the valley had become little more than a line of muddy water. For wealthy ranchers, the drought was an inconvenience. For poor families, it was a disaster. At the edge of a lonely settlement called Red Willow stood a small wooden cabin. Its walls were weathered, its windows were patched with cloth, and one corner of the roof leaned dangerously after years of desert storms. That was where Mary Collins lived with her 16-year-old daughter, Emma. 2 years earlier, the cabin had been filled with laughter. Emma's father, Daniel Collins, had been a hard-working farmer. He had built the cabin himself, planted the garden, repaired the fence, and promised his wife that one day they would own enough land to give their daughter a comfortable future. Then fever came. Daniel died within a few days. Mary never completely recovered from the loss, neither did Emma. But grief had not given them permission to stop. They had bills to pay, they had food to find, they had a roof to keep over their heads. So mother and daughter worked. Mary repaired clothing for settlers in the nearby town. Her fingers were constantly covered with tiny needle marks from sewing worn shirts and dresses. Emma worked outside. She chopped wood, gathered herbs, carried water, repaired the chicken coop, and tried to keep their garden alive. But the drought had taken almost everything. One morning, Emma walked between the rows of dying plants. She knelt beside a cornstalk. The leaves were curled and brown. She touched the dry soil. Nothing. She checked the bean plants. Nothing. She dug beneath the earth where potatoes should have been growing. Only dust. Emma sat back on her heels. For a moment she closed her eyes. Her stomach growled. She pressed one hand against it. "Not now," she whispered. Then she stood and went inside. Her mother was sitting beside the window, sewing. Mary looked up. "Any luck?" Emma smiled. "Some." Mary immediately knew the answer was false. "Emma, we'll be all right." Mary lowered her needle. "You don't have to pretend with me." Emma walked to the cupboard. There was almost nothing left. A little flour, a handful of beans, some dried herbs. That was all. Emma closed the cupboard. "We'll make it last." Mary looked at her daughter's thin face. "You need to eat. So do you. I am your mother, and I'm your daughter." Mary almost smiled. That was Emma's way of ending arguments. That evening, Mary made a thin soup from beans and herbs. When she placed the bowl on the table, stared at it. It was barely enough for one person. Mary picked up the spoon. "You eat," she said. Emma shook her head. "You eat," Mary repeated. "I had something earlier," Emma said. Emma knew that was another lie. She watched her mother's trembling hand. Mary had become thinner. Her dress hung loosely from her shoulders. Emma suddenly pushed the bowl toward her. "I'm not hungry," she said. Mary looked directly at her. "Emma," Mary said. "I mean it," Emma replied. "You haven't eaten since morning," Mary said. "I ate at the trading post," Emma insisted. "You weren't at the trading post today," Mary countered. Emma became silent. Mary's eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to protect me by hurting yourself," Mary said. Emma looked down. "I don't want to lose you too," she said. The words broke Mary's heart. She reached across the table and held her daughter's hand. "You won't," she said. Emma smiled through tears. "Then eat," Mary said. Mary slowly picked up the spoon. Emma watched her mother take the first bite. She smiled. Inside, her stomach hurt, but she said nothing. That became their routine. Whenever there was not enough food, Emma claimed she wasn't hungry. Whenever Mary noticed Emma's weakness, Mary claimed she had already eaten. Two people loved each other so deeply that each was secretly starving to protect the other. Several miles away, another lonely person was living with his own memories. His name was Takoda. Takoda was an Apache man in his early 30s who traveled frequently between his community and nearby settlements. He had once had a wife. Her name had been Leah. Died during an illness years earlier. Takoda had never remarried. He carried his grief quietly. People who knew him described him as serious but fair. He never wasted words. He never mocked weakness. And he believed that a person's character was revealed by what they did when nobody was watching. One afternoon, Takoda rode into Red Willow Trading Post. He had come to exchange leather and dried herbs for supplies. As he tied his horse near the wooden store, he noticed Emma. She stood several yards away from a bread seller. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. Emma watched another family purchase 2 loaves. A little boy tore off a piece and immediately began eating. Emma smiled at him. Then she looked down at the coins in her hand. She counted them. Once, twice. Then she walked away. Takoda watched. He noticed something else. Emma was pale. Her movements were slower than they should have been for someone her age. She bought flour. She bought medicine. She bought nothing for herself. Takoda did not approach her. He understood that helping someone required more than simply giving them something. Sometimes you had to protect their dignity too. Later, Emma began the long walk home. Takoda mounted his horse and took another trail. By coincidence, or perhaps fate, the trail passed near the Collins cabin. The sun was setting when Takoda reached the property. He slowed his horse. Through the partly open door he saw Emma and Mary sitting at their small table. There was one bowl. Emma pushed it toward Mary. "I'm not hungry." Takoda stopped. He heard the words clearly. He understood. He had heard people say they were not hungry before. But sometimes "I'm not hungry" meant something completely different. It meant, "Please eat, because I love you." Takoda looked away. He did not want to intrude. Instead he continued riding. But he could not forget what he had seen. That night he returned to his camp. He opened his supplies. He had flour, cornmeal, beans, dried meat, apples. He packed several days' worth of food into a sack. His companion asked him where he was going. Takoda answered simply, "To help someone." He rode back toward the Collins cabin after dark. The stars filled the sky. The desert was silent, except for the sound of his horse's hooves. When he reached the cabin, he dismounted. He placed the food beside the door. He considered knocking. Then he changed his mind. If Emma knew who had helped her, she might refuse. She might feel ashamed. So Takoda left without saying a word. The next morning, Emma opened the door. She nearly stepped on the sack. "What is this?" Mary came behind her. Emma opened it. Flour, beans, cornmeal, dried meat, fruit. Mary covered her mouth. "Oh, Emma." Emma looked down the road. There were fresh hoofprints. She immediately knew someone had brought the supplies during the night. Who? I don't know. The first time in weeks, she felt something other than fear. Hope. They cooked breakfast. The smell of warm bread filled the cabin. Emma watched her mother eat. Mary smiled. "You should eat too." Emma laughed softly. "I am hungry now." It was the first time she had admitted it. After breakfast, Emma packed a small portion of bread and returned to town. She wanted to find the person who had helped them. At the trading post, she saw Takoda. He was standing beside his horse. Emma walked toward him. "You left the food." Takoda looked at her. He did not deny it. "Yes." "Why?" "Because you needed it." "I didn't ask." "I know. I could have worked for it." "I know that too." Emma frowned. "Then why?" Takoda looked at her carefully. "Because sometimes people need help before they know how to ask." Emma became quiet. Then she asked, "Did you see me?" Takoda nodded. "You saw me say I wasn't hungry." "Yes." Her face reddened. "I didn't want my mother to worry." "I know. I wasn't lying." Takoda's expression softened. "You were protecting her." Emma looked down. Takoda continued, "But you cannot protect someone by disappearing yourself." Emma's eyes filled with tears. Nobody had ever spoken to her that way. Not with judgment. with understanding. Takoda handed her a small piece of dried fruit. "Take it." Emma hesitated. Then she accepted it. "Thank you." Takoda nodded. "Your mother needs you." Emma looked at him. "And who needs you?" For the first time, Takoda seemed caught off guard. He looked toward the distant mountains. "No one." Emma studied his face. She realized that the man standing before her was carrying his own kind of emptiness. She smiled gently. "Maybe that's not true." Takoda looked back at her. Neither spoke, but something changed between them. Two lonely people had recognized each other's pain. Emma had spent weeks hiding her hunger. Takoda had spent years hiding his loneliness. Neither knew what the future held. Neither understood how important this meeting would become. But the empty plate in the Collins cabin had already done something neither hunger nor hardship could accomplish. It had brought two wounded hearts into the same story. And that was only the beginning. The days became cooler as summer slowly surrendered to autumn. But life did not immediately become easier for Emma and her mother. The food Takoda had left at their cabin had given them a brief sense of security. But Emma knew that a few sacks of flour and beans could not solve everything. The drought had damaged their farm. Their savings were nearly gone. Mary was still weak, and winter was approaching. Emma refused to sit around waiting for another miracle. The morning after her meeting with Takoda at the trading post, she returned to the cabin before sunrise and began repairing the old chicken coop. Mary watched from the doorway. "You don't have to do everything yourself," Mary said. Emma smiled. "If I stop working, the roof won't fix itself." Mary laughed quietly. "That stubbornness came from your father." Emma stopped for a moment. She always liked hearing that. My father was stubborn? Terribly. They both smiled, but the happiness lasted only a moment. A strong wind swept across the valley, carrying dust through the broken fence. Emma looked toward the fields. "We need something else." Mary nodded. "We do." That afternoon, Emma returned to the trading post. She carried several embroidered cloth pieces she had made during the previous winter. The merchant examined them. "These are good. How much?" He offered her a small amount. Emma frowned. "That won't buy enough flour." "That's the price." Emma almost walked away. Then another voice came from behind her. "Those stitches are worth more." Emma turned. Takoda stood several feet away. Merchant frowned. "You buying them?" Takoda shook his head. "No." Then he looked at Emma. "You should sell them somewhere else." The merchant rolled his eyes. "She won't get more." Takoda did not argue. He simply walked away. Emma followed him outside. "What did you mean?" "There is a woman near the river who trades blankets and clothing with travelers. She pays better." "You know her?" "Yes." "Would she buy my work?" "She might." Emma studied him. "You're helping again." Takoda gave a small smile. "I'm telling you where to sell something you made." "That sounds like helping." "Perhaps." Emma laughed. It was a small laugh, but Takoda noticed it. He had rarely heard her laugh. Over the next several weeks, Emma began working with the woman Takoda had mentioned. Her sewing became valuable. She made shirts, blankets, and children's clothing. For the first time in months, Emma earned enough money to buy food without choosing between flour and medicine. Takoda never gave her money. He never treated her like someone incapable of helping herself. Instead, he taught her how to make use of what she already possessed. That made Emma respect him. Their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes they met at the trading post, sometimes near the river. Sometimes Takoda would stop by the Collins cabin to repair a fence or check whether Mary needed medicine. Mary quickly noticed what was happening. One evening while Emma was preparing dinner, Mary asked, "You like him?" Emma nearly dropped the spoon. "Who?" Mary smiled. "You know who." Emma shook her head. He's just helping us. He helps everyone? Emma became quiet. Mary laughed. I see. He's different. How? Emma thought about it. He listens. Mary's smile faded slightly. Someone who listens. Emma looked down. I don't know what I need. Mary reached for her hand. Perhaps you don't have to know yet. Meanwhile, Takoda was struggling with his own feelings. He had promised himself that he would never become attached again. Losing Leia had taught him how painful love could be. But Emma had begun to bring something back into his life that he thought was gone forever. Laughter, warmth, hope. He enjoyed hearing her speak about her dreams. Emma wanted to make their small farm successful. She wanted her mother to live without fear. She wanted a house with a garden full of flowers. Takoda listened to every dream. He never laughed at them. One afternoon, Emma asked about his own family. Takoda became quiet. My wife died years ago. Emma lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. She was sick. Were you alone? Yes. Emma looked at him. That must have been terrible. Takoda nodded. It was. Do you still miss her? Every day. Emma did not know what to say, so she simply sat beside him. Takoda appreciated that. She did not tell him to forget. She did not say that everything would be fine. She simply stayed. That was when Takoda realized how much he trusted her. Their friendship deepened, but not everyone approved. At the trading post, people began talking. Some settlers believed Emma should not spend time with an Apache man. One afternoon, a rancher's wife confronted Emma. You should be careful. Emma frowned. About what? People will talk. They already do. The woman lowered her voice. You don't understand. A girl like you shouldn't become involved with someone like him. Emma looked toward Takoda, who was standing near the horses. Then she looked back. He has shown my family more kindness than most people in this town. The woman said nothing. Emma walked away. Later she told Takoda, I don't want trouble for you. Takoda looked at her. People always fear what they don't understand. What if they hurt you? I can take care of myself. Emma shook her head. That isn't what I mean. Takoda understood. She was worried about him. That realization touched him more deeply than he expected. Then winter arrived early. One evening, dark clouds gathered over the mountains. A cold wind swept through the valley. Mary developed a severe cough. At first, Emma believed it was simply the cold. But by midnight, her mother was burning with fever. Emma panicked. She tried every remedy she knew. Nothing worked. The nearest doctor lived more than 20 miles away. The roads were dangerous, and the storm had already begun. Emma stood outside the cabin, staring into the darkness. She did not know what to do. Then she heard hoofbeats. Takoda appeared through the snow. He dismounted immediately. What happened? Mother is sick. Takoda entered the cabin. He examined Mary carefully. She needs medicine. The doctor? I'll get it. Emma grabbed his arm. The storm is too dangerous. Takoda looked at her. So is waiting. Before Emma could answer, he mounted his horse. Stay with her. Then he disappeared into the storm. Hours passed. Emma sat beside her mother's bed. She prayed silently. Near dawn, she heard hoofbeats. Takoda returned. His coat was covered in snow. His horse was exhausted, but in his hand was a small package, medicine. Emma rushed toward him. You came back. I said I would. He handed her the medicine. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Takoda looked exhausted. I found the doctor too. He is coming. A short time later, the doctor arrived. Mary received treatment. By afternoon, her fever began to fall. Emma sat beside the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. Takoda stood near the doorway. You saved her, he whispered. He shook his head. You did, he said. I didn't know what to do. You stayed. Emma looked at him. Why do you keep helping us? Takoda took a long breath. Because when I look at you, I see someone who refuses to abandon the people she loves. Emma's eyes filled with tears again. And when I look at you, she whispered, I see someone who doesn't want to be alone anymore. Takoda became completely still. Neither moved. Neither needed to say anything more. The storm outside continued, but something inside the little cabin had changed. Emma reached for Takoda's hand. He gently held hers. It was not a declaration of love. Not yet. It was something quieter. A promise that neither of them had to carry every burden alone. Weeks later, Mary recovered. The garden remained damaged, but Emma had begun earning enough from her sewing to support them. Takoda continued helping with repairs. He showed Emma how to read the clouds before storms, how to identify useful plants, and how to travel safely through the desert. Emma taught him small things too. She taught him how to sew a button properly. Takoda was terrible at it. Emma laughed so hard that she nearly fell from her chair. He pretended to be offended. You said I did it correctly. I was being kind. Takoda smiled. Emma had ever seen from him. Their worlds were different. Their traditions were different. Their histories were different. But their hearts were beginning to understand one another. And slowly, the lonely Apache man and the determined frontier girl discovered that love did not always arrive like thunder. Sometimes it arrived quietly. Sometimes it began with a sack of flour left beside a cabin door. Sometimes it began with two people sitting beside each other during a storm. And sometimes it began with four simple words, I'm not hungry. Because Takoda had heard what Emma's words really meant. She was saying, I love my mother. And now, without realizing it, Takoda had begun answering with his own actions. You don't have to face this world alone. Winter passed slowly across the Arizona territory. The cold nights were followed by pale mornings, and frost sometimes covered the ground around the Collins cabin. But for the first time in many years, Emma did not wake every morning wondering whether there would be enough food to survive the day. Things were still difficult. The drought had damaged their farm. The cabin still needed repairs. Mary was not as strong as she had once been. But something important had changed. They were no longer alone. Takoda had become part of their lives. He never forced himself into their home or demanded anything from them. Instead, he helped in small ways. He repaired broken fence posts, brought seeds when he traveled, showed Emma where water could sometimes be found beneath the dry earth, and taught her which plants could survive the harsh desert climate. Emma continued sewing. Her work had become increasingly valuable. She made blankets, shirts, scarves, and children's clothing. What had started as a way to survive had slowly become a small business. One morning, Emma returned from the trading post carrying a small pouch of coins. Mary looked at her daughter. You look happy. Emma smiled. I sold everything. How much? Emma opened the pouch. Mary's eyes widened. That much? Emma laughed. We can buy seed. Mary hugged her. For the garden? For the garden. It was the first time they had been able to think about the future instead of merely surviving the present. The following morning, Takoda arrived. Emma ran outside. We can buy seeds. Takoda smiled. I knew you could do it. Emma frowned playfully. You sound as if you doubted me. I never doubted you. Good. Takoda looked toward the field. We should prepare the soil before spring. Emma nodded. Together they began rebuilding the garden. It took weeks. They removed dead plants, turned the earth, repaired irrigation channels, and built a new fence. Mary helped whenever she could. Soon the small farm began changing. Green shoots appeared. Then more. The first flowers were tiny, but Emma treated them like treasures. One evening, she stood in the garden staring at them, approached. You're smiling. They survived. So did you. Emma turned toward him. What? Takoda nodded toward the flowers. They survived the drought. Emma looked at the plants. Maybe that's why I like them. Takoda smiled. You're like them. Emma laughed. I'm not a flower. No. He looked at her carefully. You're stronger. Emma's smile faded into something softer. She knew what he meant. She had survived hunger, loss, fear, loneliness. And now she was beginning to live, instead of merely survive. But their growing relationship was still watched carefully by the settlement. Some people accepted Takoda. Others did not. One afternoon, a group of ranchers began arguing near the trading post. One of them mentioned Emma. She'll regret this. Another laughed. Takoda heard them. He stepped closer. The conversation stopped. Takoda did not threaten anyone. He simply looked at them. You have something to say? The men became uncomfortable. No. Then don't speak about her. His voice remained calm. That made it more powerful. Later, Emma learned what had happened. She confronted him. You shouldn't have gotten involved. I didn't. They were talking about me. Yes, you could have been hurt. Takoda looked at her. I won't stand by while someone disrespects you. Emma became quiet. You care about me. Takoda did not answer immediately. Then he said, yes. The word was simple, but it changed everything. Emma looked at him. I care about you too. For several seconds, they simply stood there. No dramatic music, no grand declaration. Just two people finally admitting what their hearts had already known. But love brought another question. Could they build a life together? Takoda belonged to a community with its own traditions. Emma belonged to a settler family. Their relationship crossed boundaries that many people believed should never be crossed. Mary, however, saw things differently. One evening, she spoke privately with Takoda. My daughter loves you. Takoda lowered his eyes. I love her. Mary smiled. Then don't let fear decide your future. Takoda looked at her. You aren't afraid? I was afraid of many things when Emma was little. Now? Mary glanced toward the kitchen where Emma was preparing dinner. Now I am more afraid of her spending her life with someone who doesn't understand her heart. Takoda smiled. I understand. Mary nodded. Then you have my blessing. Spring arrived. The garden began producing vegetables. The Collins family finally had enough food. Emma's sewing business grew. Takoda helped transport her goods to nearby settlements. Slowly, people began to notice the results. The Collins farm was thriving. More importantly, the family had begun helping others. When a traveling family arrived hungry, Emma shared food. When a child needed clothing, she made a shirt. When an elderly neighbor needed medicine, Takoda helped obtain it. The same people who once whispered about them began coming to their door for help. Emma never forgot what hunger felt like. She made sure nobody who came to her home left hungry. One evening, Takoda invited Emma and Mary to a gathering with his community. Emma was nervous. She had never been part of such a gathering before. Takoda noticed. You don't have to be afraid. I don't know if they will accept me. They know you. But I'm different. Takoda smiled. Everyone is different. When they arrived, Emma was welcomed warmly. Food covered the tables. There was roasted meat, beans, bread, fruit, vegetables, and warm drinks. Emma stared at the table. There was more food than she had seen in months. For a moment, she remembered the old cabin, the single bowl of soup, her mother pretending she had already eaten. Emma saying, I'm not hungry. Her eyes filled with tears. Takoda noticed. He sat beside her. What are you thinking? The first time you saw me. Takoda smiled. You were pretending not to be hungry. I was starving. I know. Emma looked around the table. There is so much food. There is enough for everyone. Emma smiled. Takoda placed another piece of bread on her plate. She looked at him. You always do that. Sure, I eat. Takoda smiled. I remember the empty plate. Emma's eyes became wet. She took his hand. I don't think I'll ever forget it either. That evening became one of the happiest nights of Emma's life. There was laughter, there was music, there were stories, and for the first time, Emma felt that she belonged somewhere beyond the small cabin where she had spent most of her life. Months later, Takoda asked Emma to marry him. He did not make the proposal extravagant. He simply stood with her beside the garden they had rebuilt together. I cannot promise you an easy life, he said. Emma smiled. I don't need one. I cannot promise there will never be hardship. I already know there will be. I can promise that you will never face it alone. Emma's eyes filled with tears. That is all I ever wanted. She accepted. Their wedding was small, but beautiful. Mary stood beside Emma. Takoda's friends and family gathered nearby. Even several settlers from Red Willow attended. People who had once believed their relationship could never work, now watched them promise themselves to one another. Years passed. A little cabin became a larger home. The garden grew. Emma's sewing business became successful. Takoda continued working with travelers and his community. Mary grew older, but she never again went hungry. Their home became known for one simple rule: anyone who arrived hungry would be fed. One evening, years after the night when Emma had pushed the soup toward her mother, a little girl sat at their dinner table. She stared at the food. Then she whispered, I'm not hungry. Pause. Emma immediately understood. She crouched beside the child. Are you sure? The girl nodded. Emma smiled gently. You don't have to pretend here. The child looked at her. Emma placed food on her plate. There is enough. Takoda watched from across the table. He understood exactly what Emma was remembering. The empty plate, the hunger, the fear, and the kindness that had changed everything. Emma sat beside the little girl. Eat, she whispered. The child finally picked up her spoon. Emma smiled. She looked across the table at Takoda. He smiled back. Their love had begun with hunger, but it had grown into something much greater. It had become family. It had become trust. It had become a home where no one needed to say, I'm not hungry, just to protect someone they loved. And whenever Emma remembered the hardest years of her life, she no longer remembered only the pain. She remembered the night the strangers saw her empty plate. She remembered the food left quietly at her door. She remembered the man who never treated her like someone weak. Most of all, she remembered the lesson that changed her life. Sometimes love does not arrive with a promise. Sometimes it arrives silently, in the form of a meal placed before someone who has forgotten what it feels like to be cared for. And sometimes one small act of kindness can turn an empty plate into the beginning of an entirely new life.